Hello, my name is Ania Nixon, and this is workshop 2 of my final project essay on the mass incarceration skyrocketing within minorities. What was the system for people is now against the people. Crimes committed by a black man, such as slapping a white man, they may get an extraordinary punishment, such as serving almost 3 years. On the contrary, a white man could slap an African American and may get probation or even a warning if he gets anything at all. The society lacks the true meaning of equality and making America great again. Power and wealth greatly influence opportunities in today's society. The power and wealth of the world leads to an action that some may know as deviance. Deviance is the norm conformity to a given set of norms that are accepted by people of a community of society. According to Essentials of Sociology, Chapter 6, page 160. Deviance is the act of people initiating what is normal and what is not when it comes to a criminal bias. As an example of a devious act would be underage drinking. Underage drinking is a crime, but most people, related to Generation Y specifically, drinks illegally almost every day and sees it as a normal trend or something cool and fun to do. Deviant acts not always related to crime. An example of this would be the excessive trend of foolish hairstyles and clothes, as well as joining a religious cult. We're going back to history. Many see America as one of the greatest countries on earth, but most are not educationally and historically informed on what America has done in order to uphold such a privilege of being great or superior. Most of the country's population are unaware that America was built off of the misery of others. Abraham Lincoln used his presidency powers after the Civil War to abolish slavery. It was known that slavery had finally ended January 1863. But all slaves were not yet free until the 13th Amendment was passed February 1st, 1865, 2 years after it was noted that all slaves were free. It was believed that the 13th Amendment was used to help and end slavery. Blacks become no longer enslaved, but yet this amendment was designed to re-enslave African Americans as a punishment. The reality to this amendment was to incarcerate and enslave blacks at the end of slavery. People of higher authority proposed the 13th Amendment and used it frequently because it was the only way to enslave blacks, mostly the black man. Many black people were re-enslaved for minor offenses for prolonged periods of time. Some minor offenses would be walking through a white neighborhood at night or being found without an ID. White supremacists would make up charges and uphold minor offenses to its highest point just to incarcerate African Americans. This is where the process of free labor again comes into hand, that allowed other whites to become gradually rich off of the free labor of African Americans. The penitentiary was based on free labor, being titled as modernized slavery. Throughout the 1980s and the 1990s, drug war led to an increase in incarceration rates for black people. In the 1980s, crack epidemic suddenly and shockingly swept through the ghetto. Ordinary people, as well as blacks that were headed to be successful in life, became either drug dealers or drug addicts due to people outside of this region and community inserted these drugs into the ghetto or these communities. This situation broke up a lot of homes and families because majority of all African American men were incarcerated. And as known, most men are supposed to be the leaders, the providers, and the protectors of those households. Now, taking you into incarceration. Incarceration is the state or act of being confined in prison. Incarceration first began in Philadelphia in the year of 1970. The system came about in the United States when the Walnut Street Jail created a new cell house within the jail and produced the conclusion to use cells for confinement of those convicted. Incarceration rates of inmates incarcerated under the state and federal laws from the 1900s to the 2000s continued to drastically increase. Great Depression in the early 1930s led to a spike in incarceration because of one's economic and physical needs. There was an extreme need for labor after the Great Depression. Frederick D. Roosevelt assisted with a helping hand to the Great Depression by creating welfare to help others and making the rich pay 90% of the taxes. This then declined incarceration rates. In addition, incarceration rates were still low in the 1940s due to World War II, but rapidly increased once again after Clinton was elected in office. Clinton changed the welfare policy that mainly affected the increase in women's incarceration rates. African Americans have always been incarcerated more than whites. In a more depth understanding, the main imprisonment were black men from ages 20 to 34. The overall insight is not just black men, but mainly poor, uneducated black men. It's statistically shown that more than half of America's black prison inmates are functionally illiterate with little to no education. Acknowledging the fact that blacks never had the same opportunities as whites in other races gives more reason to the informant on incarceration. This situation gives leeway to make the imprisonment of African Americans much easier, even if it is unfair or prejudiced imprisonment. Being a black man in America has way more barriers than just being black. Gender is also a known factor that modern society can capitalize on. We're going to take you into words of the wise.
They couldn't vote.
Sets of circumstances such as these relates to what local quant would describe the movement of blacks in the society shifting from slavery to mass incarceration. Local quant is a sociologist from France specializing in urban sociology, urban poverty, racial inequality, the body, social theory, and ethnography. Local quant is famously known for announcing the intriguing truth of factors people face on a day-to-day basis. Some of his known books are Prisons of Poverty, Punishing the Poor, and Daily Symbiosis. All his books regard and highlight the vital issues of race and class. For those who fail to realize the American dream, as Waquan stated in 2002, Waquan's whole theory in mass incarceration is to highlight what the actual problem is. Waquan places the whole life of society into four peculiar institutions: slavery, Jim Crow era, the ghetto, and the hyper ghetto. These sectors are responsible for the control and punishment of African Americans. According to Laquan, African Americans now live in the first prison society of history. The population of imprisonment as a form of criminal punishment is rapidly increasing at shockingly high rates. People are relying and spending their money on prison so much. As an example of this strategy is black all-star basketball player Michael B. Jordan, who invested most of his money on imprisonment. Instead of doing anything to help give back to his community or the kids, he rather invested his money in creating and building more prisons and funding money for more prisons. Prison budget spending has increased 6 times more within years. In addition, more money is being spent on prisons and prison improvement than what is being spent on schools. Well, Quad has now discovered that race is not the main problem anymore in society. Mass incarceration is increasing because of the overwhelming profit of America. According to his theory, prison is the neoliberal answer to poverty because of the shortage of public services, welfare, employment, and the collapse of the hyper gentrification of urban areas, according to Quant's book, Prisons of Poverty. Imprisonment was created to strip blacks of their civil liberties even after prison. If a person is lucky to get relief from prison, he or she now walks around with the characterization of a felon on their backs, lowering their advantage in life even more. An example of this would be the right to vote and get certain jobs if you do have a felony. Conclusively, prison is not an implement set up for law enforcement. It has changed to something greater. A core political institution where neoliberalism, capitalist forms. Incarceration is a setup to wipe out African Americans. Minorities. There's no longer any room for blacks within the capitalist society. The government doesn't need blacks anymore economically.